Okay, next presentation, or superintendent's recommendations and reports. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Birding. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Martin to cover the items listed under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Birding, and members of the board. Several items tonight under Personnel Professional. Item number 1, resignations, letters A through C. Item number 2, unpaid leaves of absence, letter A. And item 3, employment, letters A through G. That concludes the items I have for your consideration this evening under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. At this time, I will entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, I heard Mrs. O'Neill and Mrs. Shorter second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Shorter,
Yes.
Mr. Begley,
Yes.
Mr. Birding,
Yes,
Mrs. Gundrum.
Yes.
motion passes.
This time, I'd like to ask Mr. Penny to cover the items listed under Personnel Support.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Birding, members of the board, I have the following items for your consideration this evening under Personnel Support. Under item number 1, resignations, letter A. Under item number 2, employment, letters A through E. And under item number 3, promotions, letter A. This concludes the items I have for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
I'll make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I heard Mrs. O'Neill first, and then we'll make Mr. Begley second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Begley,
Yes.
Mr. Birding,
Yes,
Mrs. Gundrum,
Yes.
Mrs. Shorter.
Yes.
motion passes.